All right. Hi, everyone. Happy Monday. Um, Today, we're talking about dogs who are afraid of having their collars put on. And this is the first in a series that I'm going to be doing um, for dogs who can't currently go on walks or you struggle to take your dog on walks. Maybe it's fear of the leash, fear of the collar, fear of going out the door, fear of the outside world. I'm going to show you some examples from our newest addition to our family, a fearful dog named Pancake, who, when we adopted him, couldn't be taken on walks. And I know that that's tough. We all like our dogs to be able to experience the outside world, and we may need to take them out or prefer to take them out to eliminate. So this is a big topic that can be really troublesome for those of you with really fearful dogs. Um, how many of you have a dog who is afraid of the collar? Even if you can get it on, maybe it's a little bit difficult to get it on them. They cower, move away. Go ahead and put any questions or comments you have during this time for the next, I don't know, 20 or 30 minutes or whatever, underneath the video where you're watching this, and I'll get to them as I go. All right, let's take a look at what we have today. Dogs afraid of their collar. All right, so who is this for? Now, there's a lot of different levels of fear of the collar, a lot of different behaviors you might see. Some dogs may run away when you pick up the collar, or just don't like to be touched at all, regardless of whether there's a collar involved. Some of you may be able to put the collar on your dog, but they kind of tense up, hunch over, cower a bit. Or you may have a dog who, if you try to put the collar on, will growl or snap at you. So these are all situations that are going to require um, it's going to require a bit of training so that your dog can become more comfortable with the collar. So just a few key points before we jump into the specifics and the video examples. The first thing is, don't force it. Anytime you're training a fearful dog, this is a good piece of advice. So if your dog is backing away or trying to evade you while you go to put their collar on, I'd recommend not doing it. Start at the beginning of the training. I'm going to show you progress through it at the rate that they are able to. But forcing it now, even if you manage to get the collar on today, it's likely to become more difficult the next time you try. And you can really dig yourself a hole this way. But when your dog learns that, yep, when mom approaches or when dad approaches with that collar, bad stuff is going to happen. So even though it seems more expedient in the moment to just get the collar on, uh, most of the time you pay for it later in worsening behavior. The second thing is, use good stuff to train, whatever your dog loves best, really tasty treats, maybe some toys, and work at your dog's pace. And I'll show you some examples of that today. And then the collar only gets you so far, of course. Collars are great for ID. Um, if you're going to be using a harness or a leash, you'll have to use a leash for walking. You're going to need to train these pieces of equipment separately, and we are going to cover those in upcoming weeks. Okay, so the very first steps I like to do with a fearful dog with any piece of equipment um, is sit on the floor. That sit your own self on the floor. And this is because many of our dogs, many fearful dogs find people standing up a bit more intimidating. And there's a good chance that if in the past you or some previous owner maybe has forced any kind of handling or putting the leash or the harness or the collar on the dog, it was done while the person was standing up. So we're going to try to change this picture and start somewhere where the dog isn't expecting something terrible to happen to them. So sit on the floor, and you'll see in the video, I'm sitting on the floor with kind of sideways to the dog. I'm not facing them. That's another thing that's real tough on fearful dogs. If you are facing them and kind of leaning toward them while you're doing something, or even just holding a piece of equipment, that can really put a glitch in your training. They may decide, no, that's too much, I'm backing off. So we're starting with something that's as minimally intimidating as possible. You're going to start by then putting the collar on the floor away from you. So you're not going to be touching the collar, because again, a piece of equipment held in someone's hand, it may have a some negative associations for the dog, and we'd like to avoid starting with those. So we're going to just put that collar on the ground and then take our hands away. And once our dog is okay with that, and you'll see I'm training a particular behavior, which is checking it out, sniffing it or touching it with their nose. When they're readily doing that, then we can add our hands into the equation. We'll be holding the collar up. All right, let's get our video. There we go. All right, I'm gonna back this up a second. Okay, so this is our little dog Pancake, and he is meeting his collar for the first time, his new collar. And I've placed it on his mat, and I'm waiting for him to check it out, to sniff it, to put his nose on it. For some of you, this will be too close. If your dog already has a bad sort of history, negative history with collars, you may need to put it farther away from them than I have started here. And you can see you can see my knee, but I have my body kind of sideways to him. And I'm just watching him. I put the collar down, remove my hand, waiting. He sniffs it. I said yes and gave him a treat. And then I prefer to remove the collar in between repetitions, because then placing the collar out again is a nice, clear sort of change in the scenery, in the environment, to tell the dog that the next repetition or the next opportunity to earn some treats has started. But for some of you, your dogs are going to find you reaching for the collar worrisome. So in that case, you may choose just to leave it out, and that's okay. So he gets the treat. I remove the collar. I'm going to put it back, remove my hand. He touches it. He gets a treat. So not only does this build, some kind of positive, hopefully a positive association with the collar. The collar has become kind of a cue or a clue that, there's something I can do now to get treats, stuff I like. I'm also having him move his head and his nose toward the collar, which is helpful later on when we want to get the collar around their neck. All right, now I have it in my hand. Same behavior. I'm asking the dog to, hey, just check this out. So just sniff it or touch it with your nose. And I'm trying to be careful not to shove it in his face. So holding it out and letting him take a step toward it and sniff it. And then I move it away as soon as he's sniffed it. And you might be able to tell I'm trying to keep my movements here relatively slow and small so as not to alarm him. All right, if you have any questions, anyone have questions about that first stage, just introducing this new piece of equipment, how to start with some little bit of nose targeting. Like I said, I'm just showing you the steps today that worked well for Pancake, but your dog may need more conservative steps, or maybe you'll fly through these. All right. I'll keep watching the comments, but I'm going to move on to the next steps, which include moving. Now you're going to move the collar toward your dog, or reward your dog for moving themselves toward the collar, which I'll show you in a sec. You're going to work up to having the collar actually starting to touch the dog, usually below their chin, on their chest maybe, and then start moving the sides of the collar up around the neck. So not, clipping the collar on yet, but making that movement that you're going to need to make with your hands to bring the collar up around the dog's neck. So now I'm holding the collar with two hands the way I need to put it on, which changes the picture. And he's checking it out, and I'm rewarding him for that. As soon as he sniffs it, I'm taking it away and giving him a treat. Here, that was just a real light touch, touching the collar to his chest. Now, one of the toughest things to do right with this kind of training when you have a sensitive dog is moving slowly enough and backing off right away when you need to. So if your dog moves their head away when you're moving the collar toward them, even shifts their weight kind of back away from you, or of course gets up and walks away, that's a good sign to immediately back off and do an easier step in the training. So I have a kind of a subtle example here, but I wanted to show you one where I happened to catch on video where I said, I think he shifted back a little bit there. I'm going to do something easier right away. Okay, so I'm going to hold this out, and you see how he kind of lifted his head up and back, and he looked a little, to me, he was kind of looking in both directions. He may have been fine, but so again, kind of moved his head back a little. I still, gave him a treat because he held his ground, but then the next rep right away, I did something with the collar much farther away from him. So that was just an example of a place I chose to back off, and an example of how conservative it can help you be, or it can be helpful to be. I know that may look very conservative to you, but honestly, it's faster, even though it looks painfully slow. It's usually faster to err on the side of being conservative like that. If you push too hard, you can find yourself falling back, 10 plus steps. All right, there, I just wanted to show you an example of rewarding the dog for kind of poking his nose and head over the collar. This is something I played around with. I didn't end up really requiring it in the end for the behavior, but you could do this. So he pokes his nose over, like, putting his head in position for the collar. All right, here, now I'm starting to bring the edges of the collar up. All right. And finally, you're going to need to clip the collar on. I prefer the collars with clips on them versus buckles because they're a lot faster to put on. But many dogs react negatively to the sound of the clips. So you may need to do some work just with the clipping sound. And that might mean having the collar, say, on the opposite side of your body as where the dog is, doing one clip and then feeding them before you try to have the clips clipped together anywhere near the dog. I experimented and I didn't need to do this with Pancake, but I just wanted to mention that. If the clipping sound is okay, I like to first touch the clips together around the dog's neck before going to clipping the collar on. So here I'm going to do a clip touch, I think, just touching those clips together. And there he has his collar on for the first time. All right. So let me zoom through these. All right. So if you have any questions on the steps I use to train Pancake to have his collar put on, please pop them under the video where you're watching it. Now, one thing I get asked a lot is, well, if I can't put the collar on, what am I supposed to do in the meantime? Well, if you don't have to walk your dog, you could just avoid the issue altogether for now until you can get at least a collar on them, if not a harness. You can use a slip lead. They're not my favorite. That's what this picture is right here. But it probably be better than forcing a collar on when the dog's not ready. If you needed to just quickly, get a leash on them to get them to the car, say, or to get them to the backyard or something like that so that they can potty. If you have a backyard and they can just use that area to eliminate instead of taking them on a walk, I would do that. And we have a blog post that you can check out on creating indoor potty areas. So if your dog isn't ready to be put on leash and taken outside and you don't have a backyard or it's too scary for them to make their way to the backyard, creating an indoor kind of toileting area is a good idea for a fearful dog. Remember, even though this seems slow and maybe kind of inconvenient, in the end, you almost always will appreciate having taken your time with this. And I say that as someone who has made lots of mistakes with fearful dogs and pushed too hard many times. Sometimes it's a hard lesson to learn, but your dog will thank you for it. And you will thank yourself when you are able to get this stuff on your dog, get the collar on, get the harness on, go for a walk eventually, if you just take your time. All right. There's the link to the support group if you're not already in our Facebook support group. It's facebook.com/group/dogkindsupport. This video is streaming to that group right now, as well as the business page. So if you guys have any questions in the group, you can add them under the video, even later if you're watching this as a recording. All right, everybody. I don't see any questions, so I will sign off for now. But you can always ask questions later under the video if you would like, and I'll get an alert and then I can answer them. But thanks for joining me. I know this isn't, flashy or glamorous kind of training, but it's so important when you have a fearful dog who doesn't like being handled, doesn't like having stuff put on them. A collar is important for safety, for having identification on your dog. And you just need to take it slowly. If you're in the group and have been trying this and are struggling, go ahead and post some video and we'll try to get you some feedback. All right, everyone, have a wonderful week. I will see you next Monday.